Let's get this started. I'm Camilo Payan. I'm a web developer, and I'm going to be moderating this session where we're going to be listening to the irreplaceable Erica Galeana. Erica Galeana is currently a senior creative producer at Airbnb. So that was a good plug earlier. Previously, she's worked as a cinematography and documentary instructor and a freelance producer / director / writer. For fun, she once wrote a whole campaign pitch for Burger King to launch Burger Queen with drag queens and all. Her passion for representing and amplifying her intersecting identities in all her work has always been her driving creative force. And I know I've had a lot of fun speaking with Erica, and I'm sure we're all going to learn a lot from this session. So I'm going to share a quick video of some of her passion projects, and please let me know right away if the sound isn't working on this.
I feel like I would be doing myself a disservice if I didn't insert myself here and like show what it's like to be a Black Latina woman here at Airbnb. Like you can do it too. Being able to see people that look like you here at work is super important because you can confide in people. You can feel like you belong. You can have that community.
People of color have to step up. This is the time. This is the moment in America where we have to step up and create content that is conscious, that is responsible, that is uplifting, and that is inclusive of everyone.
Before politics and before borders, everyone just migrated.
We're part of the American fabric and what makes our country so successful and the best country in the world.
I see happiness. I see consent. I see the fact that they're happy to learn something new.
I think resistance and being uncomfortable is very necessary for the creative process. You're not going to be growing in the way you want to if you aren't able to take rejection, like a no, and turn it into your own personal yes, in some way, shape, or form.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Camila, for sharing that. And that's just a small sort of link into what I do. Camila mentioned earlier, I'm a video producer. I write, I direct, editor, whatever it is that really helps me be creative and be expressive. That's what I like to do. I even dabble a little bit in some photography as a hobby. I just enjoy it. And I think part of that is just storytelling, right? And it's one of the things and the pillars that really keep me moving forward is I like sharing other people's stories, but I really enjoy being able to tell mine because I realize, the importance of that, of being able to share your story, not just, your to the close personal people that that's awesome. It's good that you feel that way, but it's very important for us as Latinos or just minorities in general, just to get out there and tell our stories. And I just had an interesting conversation with somebody, and I was telling them the best way you can advocate, even if you don't feel like you're not part of the community, but you're an ally to the community, is listen, and also ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask. So a little bit of that. So this is my first time doing this talk digitally, but I'm super excited. And I know that, everybody is joining us from far, far away. We were seeing the names come in earlier. So I'm going to start with my story. And it starts in Nogales, Sonora. I was born in Nogales, Sonora, Mexico. My parents immigrated from there, I guess, right? Migrated for me, but to some people it's immigration. And I think it's super important to know where you come from and know your story and know your parents' story. And mine, I'm pretty sure a lot of people, it's similar in certain ways, but it's different in other ways as well. So we have our similarities and we have our differences. But in that, my mom was just one of my superheroes for the longest time because she did a lot of the stuff when my father would come over to this side to the United States to work in the fields. and she stayed on the waiting for him to essentially save up enough money and be able to bring my whole family over. But you know, unfortunately, that wasn't the case. You know, like anything, like most things in this world, you can plan for things, but they don't always work out that way. And for him, he kind of would get picked up, and then he'd get kicked back out. He'd get picked up by ICE as we know them now, but before it was La Migra, right? Like just my dad doing his thing, trying to provide for his family, getting picked up, getting kicked out. It was just one of those things. And then my mom, you know, she just kind of, she did what she had to do, and she just was like, you know what, I'm gonna do this and bring them over no matter what. So she brought us all over. At the time I was a baby and I had 4 siblings, and then my younger brother Orlandito hadn't been born yet. So it was just super, you know, interesting to my mom, like have that fight to give up everything, to do whatever it takes for her to actually bring us all over, because she wanted the best life for us that she could potentially give us. And that was super awesome. But that did come with some, you know, like you pay the price ultimately when you come and you have so many children. It's like there's not enough money, right? There's not enough cash going around, especially because, you know, there were 6 kids, 2 adults. So I always look at this picture, and I remember that Christmas I got that strawberry shortcake doll, and I was like rocking the 4th stripe Adidas, the, you know, or we say Adidas, right? Because they're fake Adidas. And, you know, this picture is really, it like always touches my heart, because it just is a reminder of like how happy I was, even though, you know, like I just, in our own like naivety, we were still able to like enjoy these things in life. And even though it was like a fashion no, it was still like awesome to be able to enjoy those things, you know, wearing your long socks with sneakers and a dress. It was pretty dope. And then at the time, my parents, we were living in this, in Southern California. It was called Lerdo, and it was the labor camp. And all the laborers lived there, and that was the community sort of that we built. And through that, and through wanting more for us, my parents were just like really looking for something, and they found Christianity at the time. And you know, through that, like learning and growing through church, they taught themselves how to read, because none of them actually had attended school. And because they wanted to know more, you know, they just kept forcing or learning ways to learn more about God and the Bible and stuff. So it really led them to want even more for us. Not just, they couldn't settle for us maybe potentially working in the fields with them. They wanted more for us. And I think with that, they wanted a better life. Wanting a better life for us meant, again, you know, migrating again, moving to another place, to another location. So we migrated to Lynn, Massachusetts, after living in Southern California. And I don't know if you guys how many of y'all from Massachusetts here, but there's not a lot of Mexicans there. And to me, it was sort of like, you know, it was a cultural shock, because it's just like one of those things where like you're moving from where I thought, like in this little town of Wasco, California, there was literally like white people, Mexicans, the Black community, and I think it was like a Japanese community. And that was it. Like there wasn't like a lot, where there might have been, but I obviously didn't have in my young mind, I didn't really know, you know, that much. So like when I moved to Massachusetts, it was a whole other story. Like, you know, you have these houses on top of each other, which I didn't, you know, had never seen that. So like you have people different families living in different floors. And to me, it was like the most amazing thing, because that's where I really learned the diaspora of like our Latinidad. Like I had friends that are like Puerto Rican and Cuban and Dominican, and they're telling me about these like things that they do culturally that were so similar but different from mine. And it was just like super, super appreciated. And I was just like, you know, loving it. And it's not just that, it's learning like everything that is art. I learned in Massachusetts, because it was just so eclectic and it was just so wonderful. And to me, that was like one of the most like poignant parts of my life. And I was like, just, you know, not sure exactly what was going to happen next, right? But at the same time, it was where I was coming of age. So like, there's a lot of stuff that's happening. Not only are we the only like Mexican family, one of the few Mexican families in Massachusetts, or Lynn at least. I also had this new thing that was like starting to happen to me that I just, I didn't understand. And I thought, oh, you know what? Like, I need to figure this out. I don't know if I want to go to school. I don't know if I want to continue to study. I was a lousy student when I was younger, but when I loved something, I really loved it. And I think most of us are like that, right? When we're learning and we want to know something, we really dive deep into it. But when we're young, you're kind of like, I don't want to learn this. This is, what's the point? What's the point? So I just wasn't sure what my next step was. And with that, like, I was like, I have to make a decision. So my next step is going to be to join the military, which is interesting because at the same time as I'm going into the military, I'm also discovering that I am a queer woman, or at the time I would just say I'm gay, but I wouldn't say it out loud, So I was like, I'm going to go and I'm going to just figure myself out. And I always say, like, I went from a walk-in closet into a very tiny closet, because in the military at the time it was don't ask, don't tell. So I couldn't just go into and tell people that I was gay, or I couldn't be my authentic self yet either. So I just felt this like, it was escaping one thing but going into another thing, and it wasn't like probably the best thing, but it was what I needed at the time too, because being a strong, coming from a strong Latina, or like my Mexican household, like women aren't allowed to move out. They have these like sort of like rules, like no te puedes ir hasta que te cases, or something like that. So like you have all these little things happening in your life in that scenario. So like for me to be my authentic self, I knew I had to kind of get away, and that was where the military came into play. And in the military, I just formed some amazing, like, lifelong friendships that I consider family now. And it's just like one of those experiences that I absolutely love. And it's kind of like, I'm glad I was able to do that. I was able to like go and experience that. And when we were sitting there, I remember one time, this is like where it really, really started, like my mindset started to shift at this point. And we were in Kuwait, and 9/11 happened. And so we went into ThreatCon Delta, and we had to like grab all our gear. And we were sitting outside in our tents because we were within a base. And as we're sitting out there, and my friends and I are just sitting there, and I remember this, my friend was like, we were just talking about the things we missed. Like, oh man, I miss driving, or I miss going to Target, the little things that we take for granted, all those things. And then my friend just looks at this, because the stars are just so beautiful in the desert. And she's like, that one of those stars could actually be a missile, and it could be coming right for us. And like in that moment, we're just like, oh shoot, like this is so true. And I made a promise to myself from that moment on. I said, you know what, I'm not gonna take things for granted anymore. I'm just gonna do what I have to do to make sure that I'm taking advantage of all the opportunities that I have in every way, shape, or form when I get out of here. Like when I get back to the States, I'm gonna do whatever I want. I'm gonna drive my car. I'm gonna walk next to a guy, because over there's rules in the Middle East that women can't drive. We can't even walk next to another person. So it's one of those things where you're just like, wow. So that really started getting me going on the self-discovery of like who I am and how important it is for me to talk about it, and do the things that I have to do in order to like succeed. That was super important to me. And in learning that, I kind of just started becoming more me, right? So one of the things that I learned a lot in that transition, or in that moment, in those moments, was like how to be more compassionate, right? So if you could, I would like you guys to think a little bit about like, what's the most recent act of compassion that you've done, and hold on to that thought for a little bit, because I think like it helps us to like center ourselves. Sometimes these days, like especially in these times, it's like hard to say like, yeah, it feels good to be nice to somebody when you feel like everything's just not going your way, things aren't working out. But I think like if you hold on to that thought of compassion and the last thing that you did, and if you can remember it and you can share that, then you know, you're doing well. You're doing what you need to do to move forward. And for me, that's where it's like my grounding is I have to come from these laws that I believe in. And I think like anybody that believes in the laws of, you know, if you believe in the law of gravity, all of these laws exist. And the law of compassion and empathy are like the laws that sort of grind like they ground me. But at the same time, I think like we all can function this way. And for me, you know, it all starts with being your true authentic self, accepting yourself. So now I'm out of the military and I am, you know, learning who my true authentic self is, and I'm following my dreams, or I'm making my dreams happen. Because like when I came out of the military, I still wasn't sure if I wanted to be a director or what I really wanted to do in the arts or something. I knew I loved it, but I wanted to make sure that it was truly going to be my life's goal. And there was hardly any women, definitely not Latinas, like really directing at the time. And I couldn't just like reach out. We didn't have, this is before social media, so we couldn't reach out and be like, hey, so by the way, I saw this video you did and it was pretty cool. So I just was like, okay, I'll figure this out. I'm gonna find a school that's gonna meet my needs. I'm gonna do what I want to do, and I'm gonna do what I have to do in order to like keep it going, right? So and that's what I did. And then, you know, in that, learning more about myself, I learned that I have to learn to put myself in other people's shoes. And this picture right here is actually my nephew and my niece. And like, to me, it starts with kids, right? And this moment right here, my niece had just gotten her hair combed and he was busy doing something else. And she taps him and she's like, you know, like showing him, like she's super excited to show her hairstyle. And then she's like, and then he like turns and he looks at her, and then he's like, what's up? And then she's just like smiling, waiting for that approval, right? And then he goes, oh my gosh. He's like, I was like, she got her hair done. And he's like, you look so beautiful. And he gave her the biggest hug. In that moment, I was just like, wow, like he just knows, he has that, he understands compassion, he understands kindness and empathy. He's one of the most empathetic kids I've ever met. And it really started me thinking on this whole idea of like, of how do we start, right? And it starts with kids, and it starts with when you're young. And to me, it's super important to talk about that, because I always ask my nieces and nephews, and I even ask adults, sometimes friends, and you know, it kind of sometimes trips them up, but I sometimes can feel that something's not right. So I'll say, tell me 3 things you love about yourself. And my nieces and nephews, like at first they were always struggling, and I was like, man, this is, you know, this is why it's so important. Because I feel, you know, if you build that foundation and you build off of that, it's harder to break somebody, or it's harder to, you know, it's easier to recover from the breakings that will happen and stuff that happens if you learn that true self-love. And it starts within yourself. You know, the more you love yourself and the more you feel good about yourself, the more you can help others, the more it just, you know, again, it's that law. It just comes out and people will gravitate towards you, and you'll start impacting them and the way they feel and think as well. So that's super important. And I think like that starts with, you know, babies. Like, you know, the first person you're taught to love is your mommy, daddy, you know, like say mommy, say daddy, love, who loves you, who do you love most, all that good stuff. And then it's like all of a sudden you have to love your grandma, you have to love your cousins, you have to love your brothers, your sisters, God, you know, you're taught to love God first and all these things, but like nobody ever really teaches you. There is no class I've ever taken that teaches you how to love yourself. Like we don't teach kids like to learn how to empathize as well at a young age. If we worked that way, you know, we would be much more successful as adults. So I think like those are the 3 things that you want to always ask yourself is, you know, 3 things that you love about yourself are super important, and say them to yourself. Say them in the mirror, say them to the kids in your family, and affirm them. Like anytime my nieces and nephews tell me, hey, I'm feeling some sort of way, or they tell me what they love about themselves, I affirm that. I say, I love that about you so much too. And I always tell them to find something that's not like superficial, but to find something within themselves. And like, they'll tell me I love how I share all the time. And I love that about that, So those are super important things. And building myself up, there's always things that will break you down. And I think like, for me, there's so many breaking points, especially because my parents are very religious, very staunch Christian. But at this point, I'm already older. This is a couple years ago. This is 2016. A lot of y'all know that this was like one of the largest massacres that happened in the U.S. to the queer community, but also it was an attack on the Latino community as well. And we were supposed to be there. I was living in Orlando at the time. I lived right across the street. And my friends and I were planning on going out dancing that night. And we were going to pregame at my house. But the last minute, we changed plans. And we decided to stay in. And about 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the morning, I was woken up to, sounds of guns going off. I wasn't sure what was happening. And it was one of the scariest things because I am one of those people that whenever I go out, I take everybody with me, the whole crew. Like, we like to roll deep, as they like to say. And so, when all of that was going on, I kind of just didn't, like, what is happening? The next day, we were like watching the news to see what was saying, because we couldn't leave our house. Like, literally lived right around the corner, so from the club, from the Pulse nightclub. So then, as I'm seeing the news, I was like, I have to call my mom. I have to get ahead of this because, like, I want to make sure that she doesn't freak out. So I call my mom. And she says to me, I was like, Mom, like, how is it going? Like, and I tell her what happens. And she said, eso es lo que pasa con esa gente. And what she's saying is, that's what happens to those people. And she knows very well that I'm gay. And I told her, I said, pero yo iba a ir, like, yo iba a estar allí. Like, how can you say that? In my head, I was just like, wow. And it tore me apart. It like ripped me, like, it felt again like, it was like that moment of like, God, like, she's just they're never ever gonna like really truly understand. And she even didn't understand the implications of what she said, or the ramifications of what she said. But I knew, like, I have to be stronger. I have to, I have to move on to the next thing. I have to keep going. And so I just set my focus on something else. And I was like, I'm gonna move. I got to get out of here. And I needed my space. I needed my distance from my family as well, my mom, because I don't subscribe to the cancel culture. Conversations don't happen if you just cut people off. The whole point is that you're supposed to be a part of these conversations. And sometimes they're hard conversations, and I get it, definitely. And I would never say stay in a situation that's super toxic for you. Know your limits and know how much you can take, and then know when it's like time to go. But I just don't, like, to me, I'd rather have a conversation and figure it out, and let's keep moving forward and growing. We can agree to disagree and move on. So that's sort of like the way I started looking at things. And then I just built myself up again. And trust me, it takes a lot of affirmations. It takes a daily, like, making sure that I'm, happy with who I am. And then I'm trying to be the best person that I can be. And then I'm representing everything I do, all my intersections, all my identities, and everything I do. And so that's when I moved to San Francisco. And that was like the next chapter of my life, was being able to come and work for a company like Airbnb that, it embraced all my identities in so many ways, and has always like allowed me to be my true authentic self and to create content that actually speaks to the community. So to me, that was, like the best thing that I could do at that, with where I was in my life and what I'm doing. And it's been such an amazing creative trip and such a great experience that I wish everybody could have. I'm always like, man, you guys, like, if I could, I was like, everybody should work at Airbnb or work in this environment where you just feel so welcoming and loving and is embraced. And it's been such an amazing journey, and I'm glad that I get to share it with every other people and tell people, like, you know, share your stories, like tell people who you are, where you're from, and, you know, what are your goals, what do you want to do? Because I know that, like, to me it's super helpful, it's super therapeutic for me, but I also want to hear your stories as well. And if you're ever in San Francisco or you happen to be around, reach out, meet up for coffee, and I'll probably ask you to tell me 3 things you love about yourself. So be ready for that one, because that will happen. But I wanted to, you know, thank you all for joining my story, my little, you know, life, I guess, journey. And Camilo, thank you so much for helping me with all of this. It's super awesome.
Yeah, I thought that. Oh gosh, I think I. Oh no. Well, while she figures out how to get back on, let's get some questions together for Erica. So then, you know, if you have any questions about the presentation or about her story, then we can. Oh gosh. And yeah, we talked a little bit about how in a previous conversation about navigating those conversations, and how much of it is just you know, keeping space for certain people in your life. So she was talking about her, you know, her relationship with her mother and how difficult that was. And
Hey, it's strange, I could hear everything but I couldn't.
I accidentally well, I was trying to get rid of the screen share part.
Oh.
Okay, now you can actually answer these questions. So
Awesome.
Felipe asked, what are some tips on navigating those hard conversations?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Some tips on navigating these kinds of hard conversations, especially, I guess, around identity and how you bring that up especially in the workplace.
Yes. So I, with absolute, like, transparency, I want to say, like, I wasn't out in my previous jobs. This was the first, like, job that I actually was out in. Even after the military, I still struggled with being truly authentic with my workplaces. And it was more out of fear, and I think fear causes us to do a lot of things that or holds us back. So what I would say is I just am unapologetically me 100% now, no matter what I do or where I go. But I think one of the biggest things that I say is, like, find your communities. Like, you know,
right.
You know, when you find your communities and you're a part of those, like, you have at least a safe haven. Like, you have that, you know, like, that place to retreat to where you can say to these people, this is what I'm experiencing. And, you know, I want to talk about it, and I want to be, like, you know, and make sure that you find it. Like, I think that's what's really super helpful about, even before I completely came out to myself, I was super supportive of the LGBTQ movement, obviously, but but even in that whole, like, I wasn't out yet, I just loved that I'd get together with friends and we'd meet for coffee or tea, and we'd talk about like the experiences we're having at home with our parents, and relationships as well, right? Because I couldn't talk to my siblings about, like, what was happening in my relationships. So I had this community of you know, gay people or queer people or the LGBTQ community in general that just, like, super supportive. And then I also have, you know, I find support in my Latinidad too. Like, I look for communities that, you know, are also Latino. So.
Yeah, Javier was asking, and I think this kind of relates to that, because what you were talking about was, you know, finding communities both inside and outside of work, like wherever you can, that support your identities. But that can be tough if you're introverted or just kind of more of a reserved personality. Do you have any advice for trying to get that kind of security?
Yes, take improv classes.
Yeah.
No, seriously, I think like it is. I'm introverted, extroverted. So I'm extroverted when I have to be, but I do enjoy my very much introverted downtime. Like this pandemic, it's got nothing on me because I'm loving this time. But
Yeah.
I do have to. You do have to, you know, force yourself. I always look at it as like you gotta like when you're comfortable, that's dangerous. It's when you're uncomfortable that you grow. It's like anything, right? If something breaks, it grows a whole other, you know, stem or whatever, because it went there, but it continues to grow. So in order for us to find that growth is like maybe put ourselves in uncomfortable situations that will, you know, give us the ability to embrace that adventure and actually like grow. So I would say like challenge yourself, you know, like say to yourself like today I'm going to do this and go out and do it. Like speaking, I'm like I get super nervous, but I still will do it because I know that it's important, you know, that
Right.
I have something to say and I want to share it with everybody, and I want to hear other people's stories too. So I think that's the hardest part for me of doing this over Zoom or this live stream is I can't engage afterwards.
No
I
in-person
always look
engagement.
forward to the conversations afterwards. I'm like, oh yes. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's definitely important.
I think Amy and Camelia are both kind of in the same vibe of, especially like inclusion and stuff in the workplace. So you had mentioned earlier that in previous jobs you didn't feel as safe being like you're like expressing your identity in that way. What do you
hmm
think you do, and what do you think Airbnb does that's different that makes you feel safer in that?
So Airbnb attracted me because I just saw that it was super embracive and and I wanted, it definitely piqued my curiosity because I was a commercial, I was doing stuff for Quaker, Kellogg's and Unilever. So I was, you know, creating commercial content and it was Latino, like in Spanish and stuff. So, and I was doing fine, but Airbnb had something that I was like, I want to learn that because it come from a very traditional uh, production background, right? And it's kind of like very misogynistic in that like men, you know, are known for controlling like film sets and production sets. And there's like this just like disrespect that people have for each other sometimes on these sets that I was like not okay with. I'm like, this is not normal. Like people shouldn't be angry all day, every day. Like this is crazy. Aren't you doing what you love? And I wanted to find another way. And so when I saw Airbnb and I saw like, okay, this company, it seems to have like a really good reputation. And it seems, you know, and it's true to what it is, you know, at its core value, its core mission is to bring a world together, right? And so I was like, oh, I'm on board for that. So I think like me, what I brought to it was I am a storyteller, so I wanted to create content that tells the stories of the employees more than, you know, more than anything, because I was like, this is amazing. These people are amazing that work at this company, so I want to highlight these stories. And I was given the ability to actually do that and create some, you know, I do the traditional like content that's just kind of like run of the mill business as usual,
Right.
but these stories they let me create every so often about like the company, the employees within the company and how awesome they are and just how like they're just so like they embrace everything. It's just like so amazing. And I'm like, that's awesome. So I think bringing that, and if your company doesn't have that yet, like find a way to do it. You know what I mean? Like we all have cell phones. We all can create content. We all can do something to just take pictures and highlight each other, you know, and post them. You know, there's Slack channels, there's newsletters that go out for companies. Get in touch with them and say, hey, like it's Hispanic Heritage Month. You know what I mean? Like you should have
Right.
Latinos representing all over the place on your, you know, your websites or whatnot. So you can bring that to them. And I think like we're seeing a huge like shift in a great way. And I think like we have to keep it going. Like don't downplay it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if
Like
it's like,
positive feedback.
yeah, you want to make sure that keep the quinceañera going, like make it bigger, get a bigger piñata. You know what I mean? Like don't stop yourself, keep it going so that way you can continue to like to amplify your people and amplify like what you guys do, because we provide such a huge value to so many places. It's unbelievable. You know, our cultures are just so freaking amazing. Like, so
Yeah,
make
for
sure you
sure.
do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's I mean, yeah, I love every time I get involved in any kind of cultural exchange, almost anywhere. I just, people are just so awesome. Kristen was asking specifically about, LGBTQ coworkers and how to, beyond being a friend, how can you show them that you care about their success and things like that?
Allyship is really like, it's important. It's you sharing your stories with them and asking them to share their stories, and always let them know that this is a safe space. And I know, like, we always start the conversations that way, is like letting people know, like, if I know somebody, I can tell or feel that somebody wants to tell me something, or I'm going to share something. If I have to preface it with that, like, say, this is a safe space, like, this is a safe conversation, you can tell me, and that helps, and it helps people. And I ask questions too, just to make sure that, I understand what they're trying to share with me. So I ask just to confirm, because a lot of times, and I think like this happens a lot, right? We work off of assumptions. And even when somebody's telling us something, we kind of fill in the gaps. And if we got better at actually being just more, like, hold on, like, let me just make sure I understand what you're saying. And then, we're not working off of assumptions. So I think, like, to be a good ally is just be there, like a shoulder or ear. I want to say an ear to listen and a shoulder to lean on. And even when we're not in the room, I think that's super important. Like, when somebody's not in the room and you know that they have a quality or something that you want to make sure is highlighted, is bring it up. Say, like, hey, so-and-so is like really awesome, or be an advocate for them, and maybe they're not having a good day, and something that you can't share with other people, then let them know, like, they just need a little bit of time. It's fine,
Yeah,
So
and I think that even goes back to the question that Javier had about introvertedness, because I know myself, like, I tend to overanalyze things, and while that's great for programming, it's horrible for personal relationships, and you end up working on assumptions. When really what's kind of needed there is, honesty, openness, and just kind of finding out if there is an issue. I guess for the last question, Gabriel goes straight to brass tacks. How can I transition storytelling into a lucrative career?
Oh my gosh. The world is your oyster. I mean, when I was young, I did not, we didn't have Instagram, YouTube, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have all these social media outlets that are now very obviously like a part of the industry. They're very prevalent. And I say start with what you know. And I always started with my family. It's just taking pictures, doing short videos. This is actually something that I thought was super awesome. So my father passed away 2 years ago, but about 10 years ago, I just filmed my dad and my mom separately in just like like almost like an interview. And I just asked them to tell me their story of how they met and how they came to the US. And I didn't have like a long-term goal for this document. I just kind of was like, I want to get this. And I got the interviews with them. And when my father passed, I was putting together the video that they're going to play at the funeral services. And I remembered I had this clip of my dad singing, and my dad has this like beautiful like falsetto voice. And like, it was during the mic test that I was like, can you sing something for me? So he started singing the song, and I got it. And so I inserted it into the video. And like, obviously, like, it was super emotional, and my brothers were just like crying, and it was just like, this is the best thing you could give us, like, as a content creator, as anything else I can create, they could care less, but this one video of my father, that was the game changer. That was the one that like really, for all of us. So I think start with what start with your family, and post it, share it with other people. Like, if you get good content, even if it's family stuff, like, those stories need to be told. So we have that ability, and that in itself starts you start growing, you start becoming really good at what you're doing, and then people will start actually like paying you to do it for them. So that's how brands found out what I do. It's like organic advertising. It's like, oh, she just takes the culture, and it's, the brand is built around the culture. So you can do that too. And I think like now you have hashtags, and that's search engines, and so that help you, perpetuate and share your art. So definitely, it's just, I mean, the best thing I could say is, and I know it's cliche or whatever, but just do it. Like, what's stopping you from making money is my question,
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, there's a lot of things that once you just start, you can keep going. Well, all right. I think we've run out of time. I want to give people time to go. The next session in this section is Como la Flor with Joel Lehi Organista and Zainab Ibrahimi, two people that I like quite a lot in Techqueria. And Erica, thank you so much for your story and for this presentation.
Thank you, everybody. I hope to connect with you guys and continue the sharing stories with each other. I can't wait to hear your guys' as well. Thank you.